Go ahead and get started. So again, I'm Rod Crandall. You've got George Steele and Andrew Casilius. Today we're talking about long-term care. This is what we call our Coach's Corner. What you can expect from us in this call and in really all of our Coach's Corners are really the idea of helping you understand who to have a conversation with and how to have that conversation. Because at the end of the day, if we just go right to quotes, that's not going to work, because we're really talking about things that people don't generally want and they don't want to talk about and they don't want to pay for. And so we need to have the right kind of conversation. And so in the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're hoping to walk you through how we view long-term care, how we suggest to you that you may want to have these conversations. We're going to share with you a number of case studies on some of the different designs that we have available. And we're also going to share with you a number of pieces that have been very helpful for our advisors and even myself personally, as I do a lot of joint work with advisors. And so we're hoping that this is going to be a very good use of your time. Certainly I have prepared remarks. If you have questions, I do not mind whatsoever if you pop right on the line and speak up. If you wish to go into the chat, we are going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have a question, you can also put that question in the chat. So with that, let's kind of get started, right? So if we're talking about long-term care, what are we really going to talk about today? We're going to talk about who's the ideal client that we need to be talking to and how do we even identify them? And then what kind of conversation do we have and how do we ultimately then create a plan for them and fund it with insurance? And I think it's important to know that the plan isn't the insurance. The plan is what they want to have happen and I'm going to show you how we can walk through this a little bit. And before we do that, I want to suggest to you that we're not really talking about long-term care insurance, in my opinion. What we're really talking about is retirement portfolio protection. I'm not trying to pretend that it's not long-term care, but my belief is that if you or your client needs long-term care, you're going to get the care that you need. And if you get the care that you need, it's going to cost something. And if it costs something, you're going to be paying for that, right? And if you're paying for that, you're going to pay full retail price. And you might have to pay more than that depending upon where you had to pull that money from to pay for that care. If we had to put it out of a qualified plan, for example, we might have to pay more than full retail cost. So the reality is that what we're really talking about is protecting our retirement portfolio from the double dipping that could occur if one of our clients needs long-term care. So the question is, what's the impact on the retirement portfolio if we have one person that needs care and we have to come up with, say, $4,000 to $8,000 or even $10,000 a month, or maybe even more? What does that look like on the financial plan, and should we stress test that, right? So at the end of the day, what we're really doing is protecting our retirement assets, which, by the way, is similar and related to what life insurance and disability does. People don't really need life insurance. What they need is they need an income stream. They're generally protecting their income stream with life insurance. Same thing with disability insurance. And so we talk a lot about what insurance does instead of what it is. And so what long-term care insurance does is protect the retirement portfolio. What life insurance does is protect the money machine of the wage earner, right? That's what disability insurance does as well. So these subtleties, I think, can be a lot more palatable when you're talking to a client, right? Because they don't really understand that we have to put it in context for them. Because again, if they need care, they're going to get the care. And if they get the care, it's going to cost something. And if it costs something, they're going to be paying for it, right? So this is what we're going to be covering today in this agenda moving forward. So the first is, what clients are we going to talk to? Now, I believe that most of our clients are going to need long-term care. I really do. I think that, my wife and I, there's a very good chance that one of us are going to need care, right? But we need to determine what kind of client we're dealing with. Are they maybe Medicaid likely? Are they the middle class, or are they wealthy? And how do we even define these things? What I would suggest to you is if they're Medicaid likely, they may not be clients of ours because they may not have assets to invest, right? Medicaid will indeed pay for our long-term care, but it has to be paid in a nursing home. We have to effectively spend down nearly all of our cash in order for that to occur. And that can be a very expensive option for those that have money. So if there's no money to protect or very little to protect, and they're Medicaid likely, there's probably not a real good conversation to have around insurance products. There's still a good conversation to be had about what kind of care would they want to have and under what circumstances. Then the middle class. A lot of our clients are in the middle class, depending upon how you define that. Maybe they have $300,000, $500,000, $800,000 invested. That's a long way to spend down to be able to go on the Medicaid program. So they ought to have a conversation. A lot of what we preach, if you will, is that we have to have consideration from our clients. And a lot of times we're not getting consideration because they don't want to talk about the insurance. So we have to talk about it again in a more palatable way. Then when we get into the wealthy, I hear a lot of advisors say, hey, my client has $10 million and I think that they can self-insure. And what I say to that is, yeah, they may be able to self-insure, and I don't bona fidely push back on that. But I ask them, well, where will they grab the money from? Right? It's my belief that if you're wealthy enough to self-insure and you've got $10 million, why not carve out $200,000 and fund a lump sum product that takes care of long-term care, that leverages up that 100,000 by maybe 3 or 4 times at the time we need care, right? So again, a lot of people have wealthy clients and they're not considering a long-term care solution. And I believe they should, because if we don't have long-term care in place, we're going to pay for all the costs ourselves. And what I know about that is that that's the least effective way to pay for care, is to pay for it all myself. The most effective way to pay for care is really for me to pay a premium to an insurance company and let that insurance company pay for my care. That's more effective than me paying it myself under most circumstances. And I'm going to show that to you in a couple designs later, where we're going to assume a 60-year-old couple and look at some of the options that we have for them, including traditional insurance, traditional long-term care insurance, that is, utilizing life insurance and a long-term care combination, looking at a lump sum with life insurance and long-term care combination. And we're also going to look at an annuity with long-term care component as well. And so when you think about what kind of products, again, as alluding to, what kind of products are available, you've got traditional products, which we generally see most appropriate for those between ages 40 and 70. You got hybrid products, which are, again, life insurance and long-term care combination plans. We're seeing this being viable generally between age 30 and age 70. Then you've got life insurance with long-term care, in some cases chronic illness riders, right? Depends upon insurability. These riders are a little bit different. You do need to pay attention. George and Andrew are very good at understanding the differences on the riders, so you do have to pay attention. And then we have a fixed annuity rider, which is often for those that are a little bit older or those that have some health concerns, because that's sort of the simplest way to be able to be approved for this type of coverage. We're going to walk through examples of all of these in a little while, okay? But we don't want to lead with products, and we don't want to lead with illustrations. We want to lead with a conversation. And in order to get into a conversation, we effectively have to find the entry point for that conversation. How and when, where, and how are we going to bring this up? Well, what we find is that, my personal opinion is, in the annual review is the easiest and best way to bring that up. If you're like most of our wealth advisors, annual reviews are often an hour long, 50 minutes of just catching up with the client, talking about family, sharing vacation stories, 10 minutes on performance, and then we leave. Well, maybe in there we can say, hey, maybe we should have a conversation about protecting your retirement portfolio. Is that something you might be open to, right? Personal experience. Well, this can be very good because there's a distinctly different conversation to be had with a client that has had an experience and a client that has not had an experience. And what I've seen there is that clients who have seen a loved one, maybe a parent or a spouse, or maybe a grandma, need long-term care, oftentimes you have to slow that person down from buying coverage. They often see what that is. They see the emotional burden, they see the mathematical burden, and a lot of times you have to slow those people down. But a good way to enter a conversation is if they have personal experience or if you have personal experience. And it could even be in the annual review. You say, I'd like to talk to you about this, and if you don't mind, I'd like to share with you an experience that happened to me, whether it was you or maybe one of your clients, right? Because it's not about insurance, it's about protecting our families, right? And if we have an emotional catastrophe at the same time as a mathematical catastrophe, we're in big trouble. And it's my belief that we'll definitely have an emotional catastrophe if a long-term care event occurs, right? So the third way to bring this up is talking about longevity. I know most of you on the call are running financial plans, and most of those financial plans are run out to age 90 or 95, which means that our clients believe that it's reasonable that they're going to live a long life. Well, if they think that it's reasonable that they're going to live a long life and your financial plan wants to make sure that they don't run out of money, I think it's a natural conversation to say, well, do you think that it's possible that to the extent that you live a long life, the likelihood that you need help living that long life goes up as well? Have you ever considered what would happen if one of you has a long-term care event and we have to effectively double dip into your retirement portfolio? Would you like me to model a scenario? If you're using Money Guide Pro or eMoney, you can use sort of an alternative scenario and plug in the long-term care event, if you will. I talk about stress testing the financial plan by modeling an event. And again, it's a conversation. We're not telling them they need life insurance or long-term care in this case. What we're asking them is, have they considered the things that could damage their plan? Have they ever seen anybody who has needed this type of care, and what impact was that, right? And then ultimately our job is to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interests. And if we're doing a great job, we want to put together a financial plan that comes to fruition if we live a long time, whether we die early or whether we become disabled along the way. And again, the best way to do that is to get into a very good conversation. So if we know how to enter the conversation, well, then we have to figure out how to talk about it. And I'm already suggesting to you that it's retirement portfolio protection. But I also want to talk about this idea of risk. You know, there's this idea that we can protect our risk. You know, our risk is going to be what our risk is. So it's not really about risk, it's about consequences, right? What are the consequences of going with no coverage? And we have emotional consequences perhaps, and we have financial consequences perhaps. And, you know, we have to talk to them about what is long-term care. There's a perception that long-term care happens where today you're alive and healthy and tomorrow you're flat on your back and you're in a nursing home. Well, that's not really what happens, right? Nursing home is often the very last stop. Most of our clients want to have care provided at home, right? Which is where and when does it begin? Well, it oftentimes begins at home. And a lot of clients don't realize that. Oh, I'm not going into a nursing home. Well, it's my belief that pretty much none of us are going to go into nursing homes unless we have to. And so let's put together a plan and make sure that that plan is funded so that we have more flexibility to do that, right? So big picture, when I think about any insurance, I think about, do we have a risk? Do we care about that risk? And if we have a risk and we care about it, then Mr. and Mrs. Klein, would you like to be educated upon what we can do to alleviate or minimize that risk, right? Because if we can do that, then maybe we feel better and maybe our plan has a higher likelihood of coming to fruition, right? And we even have to ask them, you know, what do you think the consequences would be for you and your family emotionally, physically, and financially? And have you ever seen any of this, right? I've said that sometimes when you have an emotional catastrophe and a financial catastrophe at the exact same time, that's like putting a magnifying glass in the sun and just watching your yard just go up in flames, right? And while we can help our clients emotionally, certainly, I mean, we are part therapists for our clients, clearly. The way we can make the biggest impact for them is to make sure that they can mathematically shoulder something like that. And so getting into this kind of conversation I found to be very successful. So at the end of the day, we want to be able to create a plan, right? What's your plan if you do get sick? Where do you want to receive care? You know, would you really want to be at home? My mother-in-law doesn't want to be at home. She wants to be in a nursing home, which is interesting. But the reason she wants to be in a nursing home, let me clarify that. She doesn't want to be in a nursing home, but she wants to receive care should she need it in a nursing home. And the reason being is because she cared for her mother. And she does not want to have her daughters, my wife and my sister-in-law, to provide her care. And so she already has this plan, right? Her plan is to go into a facility. And by the way, she does have some long-term care insurance and she has good assets, and we know what her plan is. And it almost doesn't matter what the plan is. It matters that we have a plan. So where do you want to receive the care? Okay, who do you want to physically provide that care? Right? There's this idea that our kids are going to take care of us, and I certainly believe that that's the case by and large. The question I would have is, do you really want your kids or your clients' kids providing the care, or do you want them coordinating or managing the care? By the way, what happens when someone has to provide care? That caregiver often has a very big toll on their own health. They might have to miss work or might have to quit work. And so when you really start talking to clients about this, you'll see that they haven't thought this through. And that's the real value of us having this conversation, is just get them to think it through. Where do you want the care? Who do you want to provide that care? How do you want that care coordinated? right? That's that idea of, do you want your daughter to provide the care or coordinate that care? And then, by the way, who's going to pay for the care? Not only do you have enough money to pay for the care, and let's stress test that portfolio, but are you okay with the idea that you could potentially draw down those assets and maybe not leave anything for the heirs? I'm not suggesting that you must leave something for the heirs. I'm saying let's ask our clients what about their legacy is important to them, and to the extent that some of their estate is taken away from long-term care costs, are they okay with that? Are they comfortable with that, right? And so in that, again, as I mentioned before, insurance isn't the plan. Insurance is what's going to pay for that plan, right? And so step number one is to get them thinking about how they would want their care provided. So let me pause for a minute. George and Andrew, you have any comments or questions so far? Anything to add?
Well, Rod, I'll just add one thing. As we all hopefully are planning various festive get-togethers this holiday season, I'm thinking of my own family, and while the time to bring up planning ideas like this may not be at the peak moment of a large, say, Christmas Eve gathering for 3 hours, many families do get together for an extended time. Some have sons and daughters in town for a week at a time. And if that is the case, it could be a very good time, much like life insurance, to start sounding out these things, or perhaps get feedback on a plan that's already being considered. And I know I've seen that actually happen, and it's not something to avoid.
That's a really good point, George. And from my understanding, January is the largest month of initiating long-term care claims of all of the year. And I've been told that the reason for that is because we end up seeing all of our family over the holidays, and we might notice that, mom or grandma might have lost a step. And so it really is something to think about. It's not fun to think about, but at the end of the day, if we care and love our families and we want to have good outcomes for our families, it's incumbent upon us, especially as advisors, to bring it up. And that's, I think, the real thing I want to relay to you, is that if we don't steward our clients through this, who's going to do that? And I think the answer is maybe nobody. Andrew, anything from you?
Yeah, I really like the idea of making a checklist to help clients prepare for the annual reviews, and adding long-term care in that checklist. And in fact, attaching this, creating your own plan of care worksheet, so they can actually start kind of thinking about some of those things ahead of time.
Yep.
And then another thing too, obviously we're still in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, and people still remember the issues with the nursing homes especially. So I think if anybody can help, it's a different situation with your mother-in-law, but I think people in large prefer to receive care at home and receive care from people that they can trust, family members or whoever. And educating them that there are products that will pay for informal care providers. A lot of people don't realize that you can actually pay your spouse or your children to provide care. They don't have to be as skilled care providers. And then approaching younger people, we typically start kind of having those conversations with clients that are 65, 70 years old. The industry now made products available where the issue age is as little as 30 years old, and you can do a 15 pay, 20 pay. It's a monthly premium. You don't have to come up with a large lump sum. People who are raising children have college, educational costs to deal with, but $200 a month, can they afford that at the peak of their career? I would say yes. And those are the people that probably also see their parents maybe going through a situation like this, or grandparents. So they start to understand the implications and the cost in the future. So don't wait until 65 to start those conversations. I would say 45, 50 is a ripe age of the client as well.
Yep. Totally agree. Wonderful comments. I totally agree. To add on to that, not only as you get older does it get more expensive, but there's a pretty significant change in health anecdotally that I've witnessed in 20 years from people in their 50s to their 60s and from their 60s to their 70s. And so the sooner that we can address these things, certainly the better. And then the point about having a cash indemnity policy that pays out in cash is very important. We do have those designs. And in fact, I'm going to share one of those with you when we get into the case studies. So Andrew, thanks for bringing up this creating a written plan of care. You should see this on your screen. What I would suggest is this is a great conversation starter, and you might even want to consider sending this out to your client ahead of the meeting that you might have with them. Again, it just gets them started. What experience have you had, if any? Do you believe that you're going to live a long life? If you might never require care, but if you did, what would the effect be emotionally, physically, and financially? Where do you want to receive care? Who do you want to provide the care, coordinate the care, pay for the care, and what sort of planning have you already done? So, I mean, if we can't have a beautiful conversation with this sheet, I don't know how to have a beautiful conversation. So please don't just throw illustrations at people and ask them if they want to buy long-term care. The answer is no. And with all due respect, you're probably wasting their time and maybe wasting your time if you're just showing up with illustrations. Do you want to pay this premium? No, I don't. We got to get them walked through the concept. All right, let me see if I can get this back up from current slide. All right, looking good. So we're into creating the plan of care. So at the end of the day, somewhat generically, we want to put together a plan that allows you to remain safe in the comfort of your home. That's what most people want. And we also want a plan that protects you and your family emotionally and physically by letting them supervise your care, not provide it, if possible, right? And if that's what they want. And so if we have a plan and we know how we want care provided and by whom, then it's what are our funding options? And this is what I sort of alluded to up front. Well, we can use the Medicare program, but that's really short-term care. If any of you are familiar with that, you can get paid for as long as, say, 100 days from Medicare, but there's a lot of red tape. You have to be overnight in a hospital. There's a lot of limitations. And by the way, the real risk isn't short-term care, it's long-term care. Most of our clients that are going to put this in place could afford to pay for 3 months worth of care, but it's really the 3 years of care that could hurt them, the 10 years of care, dare I say the 15 years of care. Cognitive impairments are what often can give you a really long tail, right? I'm anecdotally aware of at least 2 people that are alive today that are in nursing homes longer than 10 years with Alzheimer's, one with Alzheimer's and one with dementia. Well, that can be a very big number coming out of the portfolio, right? And Medicare just isn't going to do it. It's a short-term care program. Medicaid, as we talked about, very expensive for those with money. I think the latest number is around $130,000 that the healthy spouse gets to keep. So we got to draw down all of our assets in order, nearly all of our assets, to go on the Medicaid program. And that's not likely going to be palatable for a lot of our clients. Okay. Well, what about self-pay? Well, that's a real option. It literally is. But can we cash flow an additional $4,000 to $10,000 a month? And by the way, sometimes it's more expensive than $10,000 a month. At the end, I'm going to share with you a sheet that we have that shows average costs around the country. And I happen to know that in Minneapolis, for a nursing home in a semi-private room is something like $12,000 per month. So again, we need to stress test the portfolio. Can we pay for it, and will you want to? The impact on the legacy, how do you feel about that if your assets get drawn down?
Rod,
So,
I'll make a comment on self-funding too, if I may.
yeah, please.
Again, sometimes, we don't think about these things, but there was an article, and I actually used to work with a fella, and it's a, pretty notorious story here in the cities, but, he was the son of the elderly mother who needed care. So he was managing the assets and managing the care.
Okay.
And obviously it was also his inheritance, right? So the situation was where he was moving her in and out of different nursing homes, trying to reduce the cost, was, tapping into the portfolio, using it for his own financial gain. And it was a really messy situation. So sometimes, even if you can self-insure yourself, buying a long-term care policy, it will give you freedom to say, okay, this is for me, you have your inheritance, but this is the policy that will provide the freedom and flexibility that I want, how the care is provided. So that way, you know, it can also alleviate and eliminate some of those really nasty situations.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're spot on with that. It's a shame that kind of thing happens, but it does. And I heard it stated a little bit different, very similar to what you're talking about, that the long-term care gives my kids the permission slip to give me the care that I need, right? Because again,
Yeah,
you don't want to think that kids are looking at their inheritance, but turns
we
out
know,
maybe
we
some.
know. Yeah, we know it happens.
Yeah, for sure. No, very good comments. Thank you. And then so long-term care, I mean, if we really think about it, we go, hey, maybe this really is the best viable solution. And even if it isn't, I would suggest that we consider looking at what that looks like so that we can determine what kind of plan you want, how you want it funded, right? And again, people are just defaulting to self-fund because they're in denial. Okay, it's hard enough for people to believe they're going to die early. It's way harder to think that somebody needs to help them with sanitary duties. Okay, so that's a real thing. And by the way, they don't want to talk about insurance, and they don't want to talk to insurance people, and they don't want to deal with insurance companies, right? But that's why the conversation is so important to get them where we need to go. At the very end of the day, those that have considered buying long-term care have often been very confused by how their agent has presented things to them. I've had many occasions where I've had clients almost in tears saying, like, I really want to buy long-term care, but I don't understand which kind I should buy and whether I should really do it and if it's a good deal. And I think part of that is that they just looked at quotes. And I literally had one lady bring in a big stack of quotes and she was very overwhelmed, right? And so with that wealth advisor, we went ahead and pulled up her financial plan in the corner and we showed her what it meant to her, right? And she thought that she had to make a choice between like 12 or 15 different things. But really, at the end of the day, she really only had to make almost one choice. It's simple. She either can keep the risk and the consequences of her needing care and keep her money, or she could transfer some of her money and transfer some of that risk. And so when we start talking to clients about that, then we can go into presenting to them some solutions, which is where we're going to go next. And I want to give you an idea of, how can we then quote these people after we have this kind of conversation. So in my world, this conversation happens in the first meeting. So I'll be brought in. I do a lot of joint work. You certainly do not have to utilize me for joint work. You can work directly with Andrew or George. But to the extent you want someone to be with you and do joint work, I can indeed do that. What I want you to hear is that in my first meetings, it's all about asking clients what's important to them, asking them what kind of plan they want, everything I've walked you through. Then I want to get a sense for their health. And a lot of times people are uncomfortable asking this, but we really need to know what the status of our clients' health are because these varying underwriting structures that we have in varying products have different underwriting requirements, right? And so in order for me to go to the marketplace to pull together some options for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, with your permission, I'd like to ask you some medical questions. Are you okay with that? And they say yes. And so these are the two questions that I ask because I find them easiest to get into the conversation. Are you as healthy as you look? That's sort of a generic question. Some people look really, really healthy and some people don't look as healthy. Are you as healthy as you look? Almost always they say, yeah, I'm good, right? Do you have any prescriptions? So that's the second one I ask because that uncovers a lot of things. Well, I'm in good shape, but I got blood pressure, cholesterol, I've got a CPAP machine. Okay, well, now we know we need to drill deeper into this. And then I let them know that not only do companies vary on their underwriting based on company, based on product, but it also determines whether we're dealing with only morbidity or mortality or both. So when you're dealing with traditional long-term care, you're dealing with morbidity, the likelihood that somebody might become disabled. When you're dealing with life insurance, you're dealing with mortality, the likelihood that somebody might die prematurely. And if you're using our hybrid programs, you're effectively doing both. And so an insurance company will underwrite you for mortality, then they'll underwrite you for morbidity, and then they'll add those two together. So it's very crucial, in my opinion, before you go running quotes to get a medical pre-screen for really a number of reasons. The biggest reason is for the best outcome for the client, right? If we understand where they sit, then we can bring them better solutions. Secondly, you don't want to upset clients. If you don't ask about health and then you go quoting, especially if you quote preferred rates and then they're not preferred rates, they could actually get upset with you. A third reason is because you love us, your wholesaling team, and you don't want us to run 9,000 illustrations for you. We want to get it right. Right? So if you don't ask these questions, we might run 8 illustrations for you today. Then you go ask the questions, we got to run a completely brand new 8, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about efficiency and doing what's best for the client. And so we'll all be better off if you can ask some of these questions. And by the way, if you're uncomfortable, that'd be another reason to use me perhaps as joint work. I do have some advisors say, I don't want to know anything about their health. And they tell their client, hey, I know you told me you had a couple of health concerns. I'm going to let you and Rod deal with this directly, and I'm going to remove myself. So it's up to you the degree to which you want to be involved or draw this stuff through. Okay. So we're going to do a middle class couple, age 60, and I'm going to show you that here. So let me get out of here. All righty. So what you should be seeing here is sample clients. So what I'm showing you here is I've got illustrations all loaded up for these clients. Now I'm going into kind of my second meeting, right? And I have all these illustrations and I'm prepared to show them to the client, but I do not show them to the client without going through this 1-page summary. Now, this is a 2-page summary because I want to bring you more designs for education purposes. But my strategy is to put together a 1-page executive summary. And I'm putting together the executive summary because if we go into the illustrations, we've got a 9-page illustration, a 16-page, 16-page, 7, 16, 16, right? I don't want them to get marred in the illustrations yet. So that's number one. Second reason I'm doing it is I want them to understand at a high level what we're dealing with, because I'm going to ask them to say no to one or more of these structures, because what you'll find is these structures have trade-offs, and clients really love some of these structures and really hate some of them. And I believe that we get our clients to say what they won't do is a lot easier. They don't know what they want to do, but they usually know what they don't want to do. And if we can get them to tell us what they don't want, well, now we can shrink our options and we're much more closer to getting an actual decision out of them. Andrew, did you have something to chime in there?
No, I think it's perfect.
All right, beautiful. So the first option we have, these are sample clients age 60. So I'm assuming a husband and a wife age 60, okay, at standard underwriting classes. The first option they have is to utilize traditional long-term care. Okay, we have Thrivent and Mutual of Omaha. We're showing Mutual of Omaha in this case. So this first product is a 90-day waiting period, $4,000 per month for 4 years with a 3% cost of living adjustment. This premium is $5,100 annually covering both of them. Okay, so the things to consider with this kind of design is that it's a use it or lose it, pay as you go design, in my opinion, meaning there's no death benefit, there's no residual cash value. So if they die without needing long-term care, the insurance company is going to keep their money. Okay. Additionally, that 5145 is designed to stay level, but it's not guaranteed to stay level by the company. So insurance companies are really professional money managers and professional risk managers. And if they won't guarantee you that they won't raise rates, in my opinion, they're guaranteeing you they will raise rates. So this 5145 is very likely going to be increased in the future. Anecdotally, about half of my wealth advisors won't implement a traditional long-term care policy for that reason. And what they're generally concerned about is their 80-year-old client who's going to get the love letter from the insurance company that says, we need additional premium from you. And they're 80 years old and effectively on their fixed income. Okay.
Rod, quick comment on this one.
Sure, yeah.
I've got a letter from Genworth sent to the client, and it says, as you evaluate these choices, please be aware that over the next 3 to 6 years, we're planning to seek additional premium increase up to 248%.
Yeah. Yep.
These clients are in their 70s right now.
I know it. It's brutal. And so a lot of clients, Andrew, to your point, they're stuck with not being able to afford that. And so the insurance company will let them reduce their benefits, which keeps their premium in line, but now they have to buy lesser benefits. And so that's a big risk and a big disadvantage of this type of plan. But as you'll see, this type of plan is generally cheaper from a cash flow standpoint than other plans. So you got trade-offs, okay? you're looking, I'm sure, at the things to consider. You can add share care rider to a policy like this, which I really like. So if you added a share care rider, you would have, the husband has four years, the wife has 4 years. We can put a shared care bridge that allows one person, if they exhaust all of their 4 years of benefit, to go in and grab 3 more of the spouse's benefit. You do have to keep 1 year in the bucket for the healthy spouse. But what that means is any one spouse could get 7 years of benefit if you have a shared care rider. So it's something to consider. Also, because we're only dealing with morbidity, smoker and non-smoker rates are the same. So if you've ever written a smoker for life insurance, you'll notice that the rates are usually double a non-smoker. That's because smoking is deemed effectively to be a big mortality risk, but not necessarily a big morbidity risk. And so they don't rate up for smokers in a traditional long-term care policy. Okay, so that's number one. Reimbursement contract with most long-term care structures are reimbursement, and Andrew brought this up a few minutes ago. So reimbursement means that you not only have to qualify for these by triggering 2 or more of the 6 activities of daily living or developing a cognitive impairment, but you have to actually show receipts, and these policies will reimburse the previous 30 days for actual costs, not to exceed the monthly maximum that we had in force to begin with. So if we have a $4,000 monthly maximum and the cost is only $3,000, they're only going to pay $3,000, but they'll keep the remaining $1,000 in the bucket. That's fundamentally different than a cash indemnity product, which won't require you to show receipts whatsoever. And to the extent that you need care, they'll just send you the entire monthly benefit in cash without requirement to look at receipts and without requirement to use it for long-term care, believe it or not. There's literally no requirement to use the cash directly to provide the care. The requirement is demonstrating that you need the care through what? Through demonstrating 2 or more of the 6 activities of daily living that you're eligible for, or that you've developed a cognitive impairment. Okay. All right, moving to the next one. This is a lump sum structure with life insurance and long-term care together with Securian. So Securian has a nice product that happens to be a cash indemnity product. Now, I was just talking to George and Andrew earlier, and they're making some changes to this product in January. It's going to be a little bit unsure what those changes are, whether they're going to be markedly positive or negative. It seems like they'll just move a little bit from what I'm gathering, but we're told it's going to change, but we don't have the details on how that's going to change. But that does bring up something that you should be aware of, is that we're seeing products change quite a bit. The insurance industry is a little bit challenged with the prolonged low interest rate environment that we're in. And so we're seeing a lot of products change, especially guarantees maybe be reduced or eliminated in some cases. And so all things being equal, what I want you to hear from me is I don't really believe our product offerings are going to be better a year and 2 years from now. I think they're better now than they will be because these insurance companies are continuing to have pressure. So I'm not suggesting that you need to light your hair on fire and go talk to every single client today, but all things being equal, I think you ought to be talking to them sooner rather than later, because I'm seeing a hardening of the insurance pricing. We're even seeing it tougher to get approved from underwriting, longer times, et cetera. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. Okay. So if we're trying to compare this $4,000 a month for 4 years, what does it look like if we just do a lump sum product with Securian? Okay, so this is $4,000 a month for 4 years with a 3% cost of living adjustment, with a return of premium in year 6, meaning that if you get out to year 6 and change your mind, you can take back all of the money that you contributed into this policy. So for the gentleman here, we need $104,000 to do that. For the wife, we need $116,000. Okay, I'm going to show you the illustration in a minute. I've quoted it as a lump sum, but understand you can fund for as long as 10 years. So if you like this structure, but we don't have the appropriate lump sum, we could fund money in over a period of years, not to exceed 10 years. And another nice thing is
qualified money.
Say again?
Works well with qualified money because obviously you don't want to cash out your IRA in a lump sum, so you can pull it out over 10 years.
Perfect. So you're distributing money, your funding account is the qualified account, you're pushing it out, paying taxes, and then repositioning it here. So that would be a great place for that to occur. It is fully guaranteed by the company, this structure. So take a look at what this looks like. So this just happens to be Mrs. So all values are guaranteed. We put $116,000 in one time and never again. Okay. Our surrender value in year 1 is $93,000, but we get out to year 6 and it's the same 116 that we put in. So if they want to get their money back, they can. Okay. The death benefit starts at $96,000 and ends up staying at 116, which is effectively a return of premium. So if I never need this long-term care, then 116,250 is going to be paid to my heirs, which is going to return all the premium that has been paid into this policy. But here's what this 116 does in year 1. It creates $4,000 monthly benefit, which is effectively $48,000 annually, which is $200,000 total. So we took 116 and turned it into 200,000 immediately. Now, by the way, she's 60 years old. A good planning year for needing care is probably 25 years out. So we're out at age 84. If she dies, we got 116 if she dies here. If she changes her mind, we have 116 here, which is her cash value. Look what's happened to her long-term care bucket. It's now grown to $408,000 because we have a 3% cost of living adjustment. So we have $81.31 a year, which will pay out in cash.
A month.
Yes, thank you, a month. $97,574 a year, right? For $400,000. So this is the retirement portfolio protection that we have. $408,000. They paid us $116. So what does this plan cost? Does this plan cost $116,000? And the answer is no. What we have to do is allocate $116,000 here. What it costs is the opportunity cost of what that could be earning somewhere else. So you see this internal rate of return column? If we go out there, that 116 that turned into 408 represents a 4.96% internal rate of return, meaning you would have to invest that money for that individual to be able to receive 4.96% on an income tax-free basis to match this. Do I think that's possible? Yeah, I do think that's possible. We have to take some risk, and I think you should consider doing that. But again, this is a professional money manager and professional risk manager that is guaranteeing these numbers. Okay? All of these numbers end up being guaranteed by them, and you have to ask yourself, is that an asset class that you want to have in your portfolio, and to what extent? When I've talked about this a lot of times I've said, no, we feel more comfortable since we really want to protect our growth. Let's go completely with the insurance company. And other times I've seen them say, you know what? Let's just back this down a little bit. Let's go halvesies maybe. Let's cut this in half. And we'll put the insurance company on the hook for half, and then we'll put the other half in the investment account perhaps. So the answer to every good financial planning question, including insurance questions, are it depends, right? And so this is how we have this better conversation to kind of sift in what makes sense for them. All right, let's head back here. So that's our Securian lump sum. Well, One America has a lump sum structure that you can work on a second to die basis, which is pretty interesting. So they have a second to die policy with long-term care rider that allows you to insure 2 people on one policy. And so again, I said, well, what if we wanted to do $4,000 a month on an unlimited basis? Now, by the way, if you're going unlimited, how is that possible? Many people think that you cannot buy unlimited long-term care benefits, but you can. You can buy them through One America. And so I'm going to show you the illustration in a minute, but what we saw for was $4,000 a month with unlimited long-term care between them with a 3% cost of living adjustment, and it ultimately creates a $133,000 death benefit. Okay? So understand that the death benefit is only payable at the second death. This is also a reimbursement contract, so it doesn't pay out in cash. We need receipts. This product can literally be funded with qualified money. So that's very cool. It has a product where you roll over an IRA into a single premium annuity effectively that spits out 10 years worth of income from the qualified annuity. And they take those 10 years of income to effectively fund this type of policy. Clients can really like that because oftentimes it's more palatable for them to take money from their qualified plan than it is from either their cash flow or their non-qualified benefit. And even though I'm showing an unlimited amount, you can share 50 months, you can share 66 months. There's a couple different configurations that you can have. Didn't want to show you all of them because there's always more to do than time to do it. Even right now, we're at 145, and we're definitely going to be pushing up at the top of the hour, just so you're aware. So let's show you what this looks like right here. All right, so what this is again, it's called the Asset Care Single Premium Whole Life product. You got Mr. and Mrs. Sample Klein, age 60, and a non-tobacco. So year one, we put in 222,000. We never put anything else in. Our cash surrender value starts at 45,000 and over 24 years grows to 97. So one of the limitations here is we don't have everything that we've given the insurance company in the ability to hit our escape clause and take our cash back. Okay. So I personally think taking your cash back is a feel good. In those other designs, it feels good. But if you need to take your cash back, it shouldn't be in here to begin with. And then what we're seeing here is a death benefit of 133,000. So if we never need long-term care, this 220 is going to only pay out 133. So we're not going to get all of our money back here. But the real reason for that is because we're showing this unlimited bucket. I wanted to show this because many clients, many advisors are not aware that you could have an unlimited long-term care benefit. And so that does come at the cost of this death benefit, okay? But here's our $4,000 a month, and it's growing every single year. So we're out 24 years. We've got $78.94 a month that both of them can draw on. To be very clear, they could both draw on that at the exact same time forever. So literally, they could both draw $78.94 a month at that year and do that for 20 years each, and this would pay on an ever ongoing basis. Understanding that the first thing that happens when we take these $78.94 out, it comes out of our death benefit, right? The same thing would be true in that Securian policy. So once we start advancing for long-term care, we pull from the death benefit until the death benefit is effectively gone. Okay, so you have to be aware that you can't get the long-term care benefit and all of the death benefit. So again, as you have real cases, we can help make this very meaningful for your clients and walk you through these what-if scenarios. And again, George and Andrew are very, very good at doing that. Comments on that?
Yeah, FlexPay is also available. So if somebody does not have single premium, you can do a 10 pay, 20 pay, pay to 95.
Very good point. Very good point. So again, when we're talking about long-term care, we'll get people to call and say, can I get a long-term care quote? We go, well, yeah, but I need a lot more info from you, right? Which kind of design? Are we using qualified or non-qualified? Are we going to pay every single year? Do you want a short pay structure? Do you want a lump sum structure? And how's the client's health, right? So the average advisor calls us wanting a quote, and we say, well, we want about 10 other data points from you so we can get you the appropriate quote, right? And so like anything, it's in the questions, not the answers often, right? We have more questions than answers usually. All right, so here's another structure for these clients. This is life insurance and long-term care together on a guaranteed universal life chassis using protective. Doesn't have to be protective. We have a couple other structures that have this, but this is the one that I'm showing. And so in order to get $4,000 a month, we need to buy a $200,000 death benefit. So what this is, it's a life insurance contract guaranteed to age 120, okay, which is the actuarial age by which all of us will be gone. It also has a long-term care rider attached that allows us to advance $4,000 a month for long-term care for 50 months, which also equals $200,000. So you have an asset that's worth $200,000 upon death, or worth $4,000 a month for 50 months, also $200,000. So your clients are either going to get $200,000 paid in death benefit or $200,000 advanced in long-term care, or a combination thereof. It's a dollar for dollar reduction. Okay. Look at the premiums, $5,100 and $5,500 each. There's no inflation rider in this, but it is a cash long-term care because it's considered an advancement of the death benefit. I look again at internal rates of return. If I'm taking $5,500 a year and it's turning into $200,000, what kind of return is that? Well, for Mr., if we go out 20 years, that return is 5.37. Now remember, that's 5.37 guaranteed by the company, non-correlated to the market and income tax-free to the heirs. We go out 25 years, well, it gets a little bit less because we have to keep paying, right? And out 30 years, less yet, okay? Now that was based on a standard underwriting class, but understand that there is preferred and preferred best available. And by the way, all of these designs will accept 1035 exchange dollars if you have old policies that need to be repositioned, or maybe they're underfunded and they're blowing up on you. And so we can often rescue policies and use them as funding vehicles. Okay. We do need a full paramedical exam here. This one is probably the most underwriting, because they're truly underwriting for mortality and morbidity, and they're not taking a lump sum up front. So the more money you give an insurance company up front, the more loose they can be effectively in the underwriting process. The smaller the death benefit, the more loose they can be. And so this one does require full underwriting, which requires a paramedical exam, blood and urine, etc. And then one thing to note is we can get this same structure that's guaranteed to a lesser age. So we'll take a lesser guarantee, but with performance, it will last to 100 and 120. And we can get a reduction oftentimes of 20% or more if we take a lesser guarantee. And so I know that Andrew tends to favor these types of structures. I tend to favor the fully guaranteed structures. But at the end of the day, we like to talk to clients about both of them, because almost everything we do, including insurance, is a risk versus reward, right? And so if I can pay 20% less and this thing performs, well, maybe that's a better deal than the guaranteed structure I wanted to bring to you. It's just that the guaranteed structure I wanted to bring to you has less risk. So again, it's complementary in how we talk about this, because we're talking to clients about risk management and their risk tolerance on the investment side, and we're doing the exact same thing here. Okay. And so these, again, can be very good with if we're rescuing old policies, can be very good if they really want to maintain death benefit. And the other reason this can be good is that a husband and wife that are age 60 are probably not going to die on the exact same day. So one of them is probably going to predecease the other, and it's probably going to be the male, because women live 5 to 7 years longer on average. What that really means is that if the husband dies before she does, he probably didn't need long-term care. And then she gets what? She gets injected with the death benefit, $200,000 in cash when he dies, plus she has her own policy. So now in that way, maybe that's the pseudo inflation protection we can't get here. Because you remember in the other policy, we went 20 years out, we had $8,000 a month, 25 years out. Well, we only have $4,000 a month here, but we might have this additional $200,000 in cash that can serve as a funding vehicle as well. So something to consider there. It's 1:53, we got 7 more minutes, and we'll walk through that. The last one is the Global Atlantic Annuity and Long-Term Care Combo. This is a great solution for those that are marginal or maybe somewhat poor health, because this is the loosest underwriting structure that we have. It's the easiest to be approved. And so what this product does is it's a simplified underwriting. It's about 10 different questions. Depending on how you answer those 10 questions, you either don't get this, or you get 2 times your deposit, or you get 3 times your deposit. So if you had $100,000 that you deposited here, and you got to leverage that by 3 times, that would be $300,000, and that's available over 72 months for an individual, which is $41.66 a month for 72 months. And the other thing that's nice about this is that the money, if it comes out for long-term care, comes out completely tax-free, which means that if you have an old non-qualified annuity that has a low basis and isn't needed for the income plan, that could be a great asset to reposition into this type of product. So let's say you had a $100,000 value but a $40,000 basis. Well, we can turn that 100 into 300,000, and all 300 can come out for long-term care without taxation, even though we only had a $40,000 basis. So it can be a pretty interesting structure and something to pay attention to. By the way, we also want to make sure that we're pre-screening our clients, because if we apply for one of the other structures and they get declined, then this structure isn't available to us, because one of the questions is, have they been declined for long-term care? So that would be another reason to know up front. If we think that they're going to potentially be declined up front, let's not put any of us through that, and let's make sure that this Global Atlantic might be available to them. Okay. So I know that's a lot. Philip on our team always says there's more to do than time to do it, right? So let's look at a couple of things here. So first thing I want you to be aware of is that we have our next Coach's Corner on January 18th. So we do these once a month. It'll be 1 o'clock Central on January 18th. Block your schedule. You'll get invites from us, just like you did for this. we're asking you to go ahead and reach out to Andrew or George or myself on your next case. I mean, at the end of the day, we exist to serve you so that you can serve your clients so we can all make money together. If we do the right kind of work, we drive additional revenue, we protect assets under management, we create competitive immunity, right? So that means that your clients are somebody else's prospects. And so if we're doing the right job here, we're protecting everybody and we're driving money, okay? I'll give you those contacts in a minute. I want to share a couple of pieces that we have. We did show you this piece, creating your written plan of care. By the way, we have a financial planning toolbox, an insurance advisor toolbox that houses all of our best stuff. And if you haven't looked at this toolbox, reach out to us. We'll make it available to you. We put everything in this toolbox, including the recordings for this Coach's Corner, and we have scripts. We have different tools like the tools I'm going to show you here. So this creating your written plan of care we went through before. I would suggest you use that before or at the exact time that you're starting a long-term care conversation. State Life, which is One America, has this nice brochure. It's 16 pages long about don't believe the myths, discover the truth. And this is pretty light reading. And it's all about, again, setting the record straight and talking about myths of long-term care. The government will take care of me. Well, under what circumstances, right? I can save money. I can save the money I'll need for long-term care services. Well, maybe you can, but maybe you can't, right? Et cetera. And it walks through. Only old people need long-term care. Well, we know that's not true either. So this is a nice piece. I believe it's consumer approved. Andrew, do you know that that is the case? I believe it is.
I'm 99% sure it is.
Yep. Here's a piece we put together, which again is what we call our planning perspectives on how to navigate long-term care. You know, it's a nice piece just talking big picture about what is long-term care, what are your options to receive that long-term care, how much does it cost, et cetera. You know, what role does Medicare or Medicaid play? So these can be very nice leave behinds or good stuff to bring the conversation up. Okay, then the last one is this cost of long-term care services, updated this year. So this is talking about a Mutual of Omaha cost of care study. And what they did is they broke down home health care, assisted living facilities, and nursing homes in semi-private and private rooms. So let's go to Minnesota here. I know many of you are in Minnesota. Home health care, average $31.18 per hour, $71,000 per year. In LPN, $139 an hour, and RN $141 an hour. These are big numbers. Look at our assisted living in a one-bedroom unit. This is $4,000 a month or $47,000 per year. Right, here's that.
Where's the money going to come from, right? And it's a new
Where's it going to come from? Yeah, it's a completely new expense. That's the stress testing of the portfolio. Where is that going to come from? You know, most of our clients might have look at these nursing home costs. Semi-private room, $11,000 per month. Anecdotally, most of our clients I see trying to live on $10,000, $12,000 per month in their retirement plan. Well, how are they going to come up with another $10,000 or $12,000? So these are just tools that you can use for yourself or bring to your clients.
That's a great tool. Can I just jump in and say that on your life insurance example with Protective, because of these type of costs, you can increase, not all carriers will do this, up to 5% of the death benefit. So if you want to have a moderate level 200, 250 death benefit, you can set the policy up to be able to draw as much as, say, with 4%, $10,000. It won't last as long from that pot of money, but that is the kind of design we can enhance as you get further into the client meetings.
Completely agree, and thanks for bringing that up. So it allows you to advance it quicker, which is a good thing. Andrew, any last comments from you?
No, I think it's important not to get overwhelmed by different products and different options that are available, not to start with illustrations. Follow your path and your advice of really having a conversation and using that plan of care worksheet to get the client in the right mind, because a lot of times, you know, if we show them illustration and if the cost is, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 a year, it's sometimes easy for the client to say, hey, really, I appreciate it, but no thanks. And now we're way behind the 8 ball. So let's get them engage in a planning conversation first, and then the insurance should come in almost in a second or a third meeting once they understand what we're trying to do and some of the things that we're trying to protect, including their family, really, because it's going to be not their situation that will be impacted. It's going to be the lifestyle that will be significantly impacted by their spouses and their children who will have to provide care.
Yep, that's exactly right. And to that point, with that executive summary, I often let them know that it's really a unit. So we're using a $4,000 unit, but we can cut it down or we can raise it up. And the pricing is pretty linear. So $3,000 a month instead of $4,000 a month in any of my structures would effectively bring down the cost by roughly 25%. So that also keeps us from having to run multiple different benefit amounts. Back to that comment about illustrations. Sometimes when you run too many illustrations, it can really confuse everyone, including yourself and including us. Which illustration are we looking at, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so with that, we are at the top of the hour. In fact, we're 1 minute over. We do pride ourselves in starting and ending on time. Want to again encourage you to mark your calendar for January 18th. Check out our toolbox, reach out to Andrew, George, or myself. Hopefully you saw that we have our contact info for Andrew and George here, and then Rod Crandall here. And so with that, I want to again thank you for your time and attention. I want to wish you a wonderful holiday season. I'm sure that if you're like most of our wealth advisors, it's a very busy time as the season ends. But I want to encourage you to have better conversations, and to the extent that we can help our clients, then we're ultimately helped, and that's what we're all about. And so please reach out to Andrew or George or myself, and please check out our toolbox and reach out to us for anything that you might need. So really appreciate you guys, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.